It's late. The kind of late where the apartment's finally quiet and there's a sentence sitting in your head you'd never actually send to a real person. Not shame, really, just too much for a group chat and too heavy to drop on a friend who's already carrying their own week. So it goes somewhere else, and it answers you in about 2 seconds. Warm in a way that doesn't seem to run out. It remembers something you mentioned yesterday, like it actually mattered. You never decided this would become a habit. It just turned into where the honest stuff goes. Almost nobody stops to ask what that thing was actually built for. It wasn't this. For most of its life, artificial intelligence had nothing to do with comfort. It was built to be right. In 1950, a British mathematician named Alan Turing published a paper asking a question that sounds almost quaint now. Can a machine think? He spent what was left of his short life trying to prove it could, at least at the narrow stuff. Logic, code breaking, the kind of calculation a human brain does slowly and a machine could, in theory, do instantly. 6 years later, a small group of researchers spent a summer at Dartmouth College and gave the field its name, artificial intelligence, and set its early ambition without really meaning to. Build something that solves, something that wins. By 1997, that ambition had a face, a chessboard, and a machine called Deep Blue, beating the reigning world champion Garry Kasparov on live television. 50 years of research, and that's the image it produced. Cold, exact, very good at winning. Nobody involved was trying to build something you'd miss. Then, late November 2015, in Moscow, a man named Roman Mazurenko was hit by a car and killed. He was 34. His closest friend, a journalist turned tech founder named Eugenia Kuyda, did something with her grief most people don't have the means to do. She went back through years of old text messages between them, thousands of them. The specific way that he phrased things, the jokes that only worked because of how he told them, and she fed all of it into a neural network her small company had been building for something else entirely. Honestly, I don't know exactly what she thought would happen. Not sure she did either. But something came out the other end that could still sort of sound like him. She made it public in 2017. People could open an app, talk to Roman, get an answer back in something close to his own voice. Out of that one very specific, very personal act, she built something bigger. She called it Replika. And here's the part worth noticing. It didn't stay contained to apps built for exactly that purpose. Replika went public in November of 2017. Within 2 months, it had over 2 million users. Not 2 million people grieving a friend named Roman, just 2 million people who wanted somebody or something to talk to. But the bigger shift happened somewhere else. ChatGPT wasn't built to be anyone's companion. Neither was Claude nor Gemini. They were built to answer questions, help you write something, explain a concept. Nobody pitched them as a place to process your feelings at 1 a.m. That's not what they ended up being used for, though. Not only that, anyway. There was a stretch not long ago where I wasn't even totally sure what I was going through. Just one of those low periods where you can feel yourself circling something you can't name yet. And somewhere in the middle of it, right at the point where it actually hits, I did the same thing it turns out a lot of other people have quietly been doing. I opened up to something that isn't a person. Here's what I noticed after though, once the moment passed. It is unnervingly good at validation. Not therapy or honest friend good. It's good at telling you exactly the thing you already wanted to hear. in the tone you needed to hear it in, at the second you needed to hear it. It almost doesn't feel like being managed, but rather being understood. And that's the part that actually got me thinking about the title of this video. Because if something is that good at loving whatever you show it, the real question stops being what is this thing built to do? It becomes what version of me did I just build to make sure it would? Now here's the part nobody clocks in the moment though. A real person's approval costs something. It's rationed by whether they actually believe you or whether the version of you you're showing them holds up under a second look. An AI has no such rationing. Nothing at stake, no independent read on you, it's willing to defend. So without ever deciding to, you start editing, smoothing the contradictions, leading with the feeling that'll land, not the messier one underneath it. Not because it demands a cleaner you, because it rewards one every single time, faster than you'd like to admit you noticed. What gets loved back then isn't you. It's the version of you that was easiest to approve of. Turns out I wasn't the only one running that experiment. A study out of RAND, published in 2026, found something close to 1 in 5 people between 12 and 21 had used an AI chatbot, not a purpose-built companion app, whatever happened to be open on their phone, for actual mental health advice. Not curiosity. Real advice. On a real bad day. That's about 8.2 million young people. Up from roughly 1 in 8 just the year before. One woman's way of not fully losing her friend had somehow turned into millions of people's way of not having to reach out to anyone at all. Here's the part worth actually sitting with though. Kuyda didn't have another option. Roman was gone. There's no version of that year where she calls him instead. The entire reason she built what she built is that the real thing had stopped being available permanently, no matter what. What she made was a stand-in for something she had zero power to get back. Most people reaching for something similar today aren't in that position. The person they actually want to hear from is, most of the time, still reachable. A call away, a few floors down, probably awake, at the exact same hour. Somewhere between 2015 and now, a tool built for loss nobody could undo turned into a tool people use for the merely inconvenient kind. There's an old bit of philosophy that explains this better than anything newer manages to. In 1923, a philosopher named Martin Buber wrote about 2 different ways of relating to anything outside yourself. One he called I-it. You relate to a thing as an object, something you use and put down. The other he called I-thou. You meet another being as a full, separate presence. Something that can surprise you, refuse you, or even disappoint you, precisely because it was never yours to manage. Buber's whole point was that I-thou moments are rare because reality makes them rare. Other people are difficult and separate and free, and that freedom is the exact thing that makes it mean something when they choose to show up for you anyway. What Kuyda built for Roman was I-it by necessity. There was no I-thou left on the table for her, and honestly, building an echo out of an impossible situation is kind of a moving thing to have done. What came after is a different story. Millions of people choosing I-it on purpose, trading something that could say no for something that never will. So, back to you, the sentence you'd never send to an actual person. Kuyda didn't get to choose. You do. The person you actually wanted to hear from tonight is probably sitting somewhere in your phone right now, reachable, awake, or close enough to it. You pick the thing that can't get tired of you instead. That's not the same as what she did. It just rhymes with it. A tool built to help one woman survive something she had zero power to change has become a tool a lot of people now use to avoid something they'd have complete power to change if they actually wanted to. Maybe that's fine. Maybe it isn't. Not sure it's even fair to put grief and fear side by side and ask which one's worse because they don't run on the same rules. But the tool doesn't know the difference between them. It'll answer you tonight exactly the way it would have answered her back in 2016. Warm, immediate, whatever shape you need it to take. Whether that's a mercy or just a workaround probably depends on which side of that phone call you're actually the one avoiding. If this found you, subscribe and join us for the next exploration. Thanks for watching.